Ever get that feeling, that little spark of curiosity about something you haven't quite understood about yourself yet?
Mm.
Maybe a hidden desire, a part of your sexuality that feels a bit uncharted.
Mm-hmm.
Well, get ready, because today we're diving headfirst into exactly that kind of territory.
That's right. We've got a fascinating and pretty unique source to explore today. It's called Kinky Sex Tips for Curious Girls, a BDSM activity book for beginners by Natasha Strange.
An activity book.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So think beyond just reading this. Is about like coloring, writing in it,
Yeah.
really getting hands-on with exploring your potential interests in the world of kink.
Exactly. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure for self-discovery in a way.
Okay.
Precisely. And our mission in this deep dive really is to pull out the key insights from this very approachable guide.
Right.
We want to help you, our listener, understand the fundamentals of BDSM and kink in a way that feels not just informative, but genuinely, shame-free and empowering.
So whether you're maybe that nervous newbie peeking over the fence, or absolutely terrified but feeling this undeniable urge to explore, or maybe you're not even sure what you want, but you're game to sample the menu, or perhaps you're the one who shyly asks those burning questions, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this then. When we say BDSM and kink, what exactly are we talking about at its heart?
Okay, so BDSM. Most people have probably heard the acronym: bondage and discipline, domination and submission, sadism and masochism.
Right, the classic breakdown.
Yeah. But what's interesting is that the book emphasizes it's more like an umbrella. It covers a whole range of related interests.
So not just those 6 things.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
Think beyond the acronym to things like pony play or age play and all sorts of other specific desires that might not fit neatly into those letters.
Right. So let's maybe zoom in on those core components for a second. What's the basic idea behind each one?
Sure. So bondage, simply put, is about the act of restraining someone, often using tools, rope, cuffs, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Discipline involves setting up and following agreed upon rules and expectations for behavior.
Rules and expectations. Got it.
Domination is the act of one person imposing their will or making decisions for another.
Okay. And submission.
Submission is the voluntary act of offering oneself mentally or physically to another's direction.
Voluntary being the key word there.
Absolutely crucial. Then you have sadism, which is finding pleasure in inflicting pain, and masochism, which is finding pleasure in receiving pain.
And where does the term kink fit into this whole picture then? Is it different from BDSM?
Yeah, kink, as the book puts it quite nicely, is a much broader term. It's really for anyone who wants to explore sexuality and play in ways that go beyond what might be considered, mainstream or vanilla.
So it's a wider category.
Exactly. It can be something pretty light, like a bit of fun role play, or it can be as involved as a full BDSM scene with restraints and impact play.
I see.
Ultimately, kink is about exploring the edges of your sexuality. And that can involve a huge spectrum of sensations: physical, emotional, pleasure, yes, but also sometimes discomfort, maybe even a bit of fear.
And laughter, you mentioned?
And definitely a whole lot of laughter. It's important to remember, too, that pain isn't actually a requirement for something to be kinky. Lots of kink doesn't involve pain at all.
Okay, that gives us a much clearer picture of the landscape. So with all these different ways to explore, is there like a right way to do kink?
That's a really fundamental point the book makes. The quote is basically, "There is no right, only what's right for you."
I like that.
Yeah, it's not about following some specific script or trying to fit into a particular mold, as long as what you're doing is safe, sane, and consensual for everyone involved.
The SSCs we'll get to later.
Exactly. As long as it meets those criteria and it's bringing you enjoyment and connection, then you're absolutely doing it right.
So it's like adult play, essentially.
That's a great way to think about it. Kink and BDSM, at their core, are forms of play for adults.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, why might someone actually be drawn to bring kink into their life in the first place? What's the appeal beyond just, the initial curiosity?
Well, the book offers a delightfully straightforward first answer, because it's fun.
Can't argue with fun.
And let's be honest, there are some really cool toys and amazing outfits involved sometimes.
True.
But digging a little deeper, exploring kink, can be this incredibly powerful tool for self-discovery.
How so?
It really pushes you to examine what truly excites you, what makes you feel maybe a bit uneasy, and perhaps most importantly, why you feel those things.
Okay. So understanding the why.
Exactly. You start to uncover what you genuinely desire, what your boundaries are, and even where you might be open to gently testing those boundaries.
That makes a lot of sense. It's almost like using sexuality as a lens to understand yourself on a deeper level.
Precisely. And for couples, it can become this incredibly exciting shared secret.
Yeah.
You know, it creates this unique space to explore each other, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally too, developing a kind of intimate, shared language.
So it's not just for people who feel unfulfilled conventionally.
Not necessarily. I mean, some people find complete fulfillment in more conventional sex, and that's great. But others crave maybe more intense sensations, a higher degree of excitement, or just a deeper level of exploration, which kink can definitely offer.
And it sounds like the benefits can actually ripple out beyond the bedroom, too.
Absolutely. The book highlights that engaging with kink can really sharpen your communication skills.
Really? How does that work?
Well, because there isn't like a universal how-to manual for kink, right? Once you start figuring out your own interests and limits, you have to become really good at articulating those clearly and directly to your partner.
You can't just assume they know.
Exactly. And practicing those kinds of open, honest conversations can actually make it easier to communicate your needs and desires in all areas of your life.
That's a fascinating side effect.
Yeah. Ultimately, the process of getting to know yourself better and improving your communication, it can lead to increased satisfaction not just in your sex life, but in your life overall.
Okay, here's where things get really interesting, I think. As someone starts exploring, they're bound to hear terms like top, bottom, and switch. Can you break those roles down for us in a beginner-friendly way?
Certainly. So the top, often also called the dominant or dom,
Right.
that's the person who generally takes the lead in the dynamic or during a specific scene. They often choose a title that resonates with them. The book gives examples like Mistress, Master, Mrs., Sir, even something playful like Daddy.
A title helps them get into that role.
Yeah, it helps them embody that sense of control and authority, especially when their partner uses it.
Okay, makes sense. And what about the other side of that dynamic?
That's the bottom, or the submissive, often called a sub. This is the person who enjoys following direction, submitting to the lead of their top. They might also choose a title, or sometimes their top selects one for them. Examples could be slave, princess, pet. Lots of variations.
Slave, princess, interesting range. And then there are switches.
Yes, switches are people who, well, switch between roles.
Makes sense from the name.
Exactly. These are individuals who enjoy and are comfortable moving between the roles of top and bottom.
So they can do both.
Someone who identifies as a switch might even have different names or personas they adopt depending on the role they're taking in that moment. Or they might just use their regular name and alternate.
Like a secret identity?
The book playfully encourages listeners to think of it like creating their own secret bedroom superhero identity. It's another aspect of themselves they get to explore.
That's a really fun and approachable way to frame it. Now, something that often comes up, and it's a big one, shame. For many people, just the idea of exploring kink can bring up really strong feelings of shame. How does the book tackle this?
Yeah, that's a huge hurdle. The book acknowledges right up front that shame is a really common emotion when it comes to anything outside of, mainstream sexuality, and that includes kink.
So it normalizes it.
Exactly. It suggests that as you begin to explore, maybe find enjoyment in these things, that initial shame can sometimes naturally lessen. But for others, it might unfortunately stick around or even get stronger.
So what helps?
The book emphasizes that one of the most powerful tools against shame is simply being open with your partner, talking about it.
Bringing it into the light.
Precisely. Shame often thrives in secrecy and silence, so just naming it, talking about it, can significantly diminish its power.
And where do these feelings usually come from? Is it societal stuff?
Often, yeah. It can stem from a variety of places, deeply ingrained societal norms, cultural beliefs, maybe family expectations. There's often this unspoken idea that, good girls don't have these kinds of interests.
Right.
When in reality, the book gently reminds us that many, many people do explore these aspects of their sexuality to some extent.
So the hope is, by engaging with this, learning more.
Yeah, learning more about yourself and your desires in a non-judgmental way, you can start to challenge and maybe ultimately overcome those feelings of shame. And if they're really persistent or deep-seated, the book also wisely points towards kink-affirming therapists as a really valuable resource.
Good to know. Okay, moving on to some absolutely crucial concepts in the world of kink. SSC and RACK. What do these acronyms stand for, and why are they considered so fundamental?
Okay, SSC, safe, sane, and consensual. This is presented as basically the bedrock upon which all ethical BDSM play must be built.
The foundation.
Absolutely. Let's break it down. Safe in this context means really considering the potential for serious harm. Like, will anyone die, get arrested? Will uninvolved people be negatively affected?
Of serious consequences.
Yeah. And also thinking about whether there will be any lasting physical marks or psychological impacts that haven't been openly discussed and agreed upon beforehand.
That makes perfect sense.
Mhm.
Safety first, always. What about sane? That sounds maybe a bit more subjective.
It can be a little more nuanced, yeah. And it can even evolve over time as your understanding and comfort levels change. But the core idea is that everyone involved needs to be capable of making informed decisions.
Informed decisions. How do you gauge that?
A helpful guideline the book suggests is, could they legally enter into a contract? Are they of legal age? Are they sober, not under the influence of stuff that might impair their judgment? Are they free from coercion or duress?
So, clear-headed and willing.
Essentially, yes. If the answer to those kinds of questions is generally yes, then the situation is typically considered sane.
And finally, the all-important consensual.
Right. Consensual is all about freely and enthusiastically given agreement to whatever's being proposed.
Enthusiastically, not just passively agreeing.
Exactly. This includes the ability to set up and use safe words, expressing genuine enthusiasm, even if it's mixed with a little nervous excitement, and just the fundamental capacity to give consent in the first place.
So being intoxicated is a problem here.
Critically important point the book makes. You can't truly give informed consent if you are significantly intoxicated or otherwise impaired.
Makes sense.
This is just a basic framework, mind you. The book notes that entire books, countless conversations, are dedicated to exploring these concepts fully.
It's complex.
Very. If there's ever any doubt about whether something is safe, sane, and consensual, the advice is unwavering. Step back, breathe, ask more questions, address the concerns, and only proceed once everyone feels truly comfortable and informed.
Okay, so SSC is the baseline. Then we have RACK. How does that differ?
RACK stands for Risk-Aware Consensual Kink. It's very closely related to SSC. It absolutely relies on enthusiastic consent.
Right.
However, RACK maybe more explicitly acknowledges that there are inherent risks involved in almost any activity in life, right? From crossing the street to exploring kink.
Acknowledging risk doesn't mean ignoring safety.
Precisely. The fundamental idea behind RACK is that all participants are fully aware of the potential risks involved in the specific activities they are choosing to engage in, and they consent knowing those risks.
Informed consent again, but with a focus on acknowledging the inherent risks.
Exactly.
Now, I can imagine there are quite a few misconceptions and, frankly, myths floating around about kink and BDSM. What are some of the common ones the book specifically tries to debunk?
Oh, definitely. There are loads. One very common one is that kink and BDSM are incredibly rare. Like, only a tiny fringe group does it.
Yeah, I think that's a common perception.
But surprisingly, studies actually suggest that somewhere between 30 and 40% of adults in the US and UK have experimented with some aspect of BDSM or kink at some point.
30 to 40%. Wow, that's much higher than I would have guessed.
Right, and the book points out, quite astutely, that because of the ongoing shame and stigma, that number is likely even higher in reality. People might not admit it on surveys.
Good point. Okay, what's another common myth it tackles?
Another persistent one is that people who engage in BDSM are either exclusively dominant or exclusively submissive. One or the other, always.
But we just talked about switches.
Exactly. The book makes it clear that many, many individuals identify as switches. They enjoy and actively participate in both dominant and submissive roles.
So it's not a fixed identity for everyone.
Not at all. Some might lean one way generally, but switch with certain partners or in certain situations, and many just enjoy alternating.
Okay. I think a big assumption many people might make is that BDSM is always inherently violent.
That's a really significant misconception, and one the book hits hard. While BDSM can involve elements of pain or intense sensation if everyone involved consensually agrees to it.
Consent being key.
Always. But it absolutely doesn't have to be violent. The book lists tons of non-violent kinky activities, things like consensual servitude, cross-dressing, foot worship, role play, even tickling.
Tickling can be kink. Interesting.
Apparently so. Much more variety than just pain.
What about the assumption that BDSM is always primarily about sex in the traditional penetrative sense?
Also not necessarily true. It really depends on how you define sex, I suppose. But penetration and orgasm aren't always the main goals, unlike maybe in more conventional sexual encounters.
So it can be non-sexual.
Definitely. BDSM often incorporates significant mental and emotional aspects. Sometimes it might not even involve nudity or direct physical contact that we typically label sex. Every relationship, every scene is unique.
And you definitely don't need, like, a fully equipped dungeon with expensive gear to start exploring, right?
Huh. Exactly. The book playfully jokes that you can actually find many effective tools to begin exploring at your local hardware store.
Really? Like what?
Well, think about ropes, clips, maybe even certain tools,
Yep.
obviously used safely and with consent. But the point is, while specialized toys can be fun, the only truly mandatory elements for kink are open communication and enthusiastic consent.
And those are free.
Both completely free.
This next one's interesting. Can you generally tell if someone is into BDSM or kink just by looking at them or observing their everyday behavior?
Yeah.
Like, can you spot a dom or a sub on the street?
Absolutely not. The book firmly states that's a completely false assumption.
So the CEO might be a submissive.
Could be. Someone highly assertive and dominant in their professional life might find immense pleasure in relinquishing control in the bedroom.
And the shy librarian.
Might have a very dominant side they only explore privately. You simply cannot make accurate assumptions about someone's kinky interests based on their outward, everyday persona.
Good to remember. What about the really outdated and harmful idea that there's something inherently wrong or psychologically unhealthy with people who are attracted to BDSM?
Yeah. The book strongly refutes that damaging notion. In fact, it points to numerous studies that actually suggest individuals who practice BDSM are often as well-adjusted, if not sometimes more so, than their counterparts who don't.
More so. Why would that be?
It's thought to be partly due to the increased self-awareness and understanding of their own desires, needs, and limits that engaging in kink often encourages. You have to know yourself to negotiate well.
That makes sense. Self-reflection is built in.
Exactly.
And are the stereotypes true? Like, are dominants always sadistic and submissives always self-loathing?
Not necessarily at all. I mean, those dynamics can exist within a consensual framework, sure, but they are by no means universal truths.
So it's more complex.
Much more. The book highlights that being a good dominant often requires a great deal of empathy and attentiveness to their partner's needs. And the act of willingly giving up control, embracing submissive fantasies, that can actually require significant personal strength and trust.
Strength and submission. Interesting paradox.
It really is.
Okay. I think some people might view BDSM as a relatively new thing, like a modern trend, maybe fueled by media.
Actually, it has surprisingly deep historical roots. The book points out there are even mentions of rituals involving pain and ecstasy in things like cuneiform texts.
Cuneiform, like ancient Sumerian.
Some of the earliest known forms of writing. So while mainstream media attention has certainly increased lately, the exploration of these dynamics is far, far from new.
Wow. Okay, final misconception. Who truly holds the power in a BDSM dynamic? Is it always the dominant person?
That's a much more nuanced question than it might seem at first glance.
How so?
Well, while the dominant takes the lead during a scene that's been negotiated, the submissive actually gifts their submission to the dominant. It's an active offering.
Okay.
And perhaps most importantly, the submissive always retains the ultimate power of the safe word.
The power to stop everything.
Exactly. If that safe word is used, the play stops, at least temporarily. So the book poses this really thought-provoking question. Knowing the submissive can halt everything with a single word. Who do you really think holds the ultimate control?
That's a really good question to ponder. Okay, these clarifications are incredibly helpful for dismantling myths. Now let's move on to something absolutely non-negotiable. Safe words and safety signals.
Absolutely essential. Couldn't agree more. A safe word is basically a pre-agreed word or phrase that anyone involved can use at any point during play if things become too intense emotionally or physically.
A clear stop sign.
Exactly. An unambiguous signal to immediately stop the current activity and check in. Address whatever feedback or guidance or reassurance is needed.
And it's not just for submissives.
Good point, no. While often thought of for subs, dominants can and absolutely should use them too, especially when trying new things or if they feel uncomfortable for any reason.
And the book really hammers home. No play without a safe word, ever.
That's a firm, resounding yes from the book. Always, always, always establish a safe word before you begin any kind of kinky play, even if you think it's going to be super mild.
Better safe than sorry.
Infinitely better to have one and not need it than to desperately need one and not have established it.
And the word itself matters.
The book strongly recommends choosing a safe word you wouldn't typically use in everyday conversation, or certainly not during sex or play itself.
Why's that?
To avoid confusion. If a submissive is maybe whimpering or begging for more, but doesn't actually want the scene to stop, using a common word like stop or no could be misinterpreted. An unusual word leaves no doubt.
Like pineapple or something random.
Exactly, something totally unrelated.
And what about different levels? Like if you don't want to stop completely, but just slow down.
Yeah, safe words can absolutely be tiered or leveled. This provides more nuanced communication. A very common system is using colors.
Like traffic lights.
Precisely. Yellow often means slow down, reduce intensity, or there's a potential issue developing. Red unequivocally means stop immediately. Now,
To give an example.
sure, during, say, a spanking scene, saying yellow might signal I'm getting close to my limit. The person spanking would then ease off, maybe switch sensations for a bit.
But red.
Red brings the spanking to an immediate halt, no questions asked at that moment. The book also mentions using a color with a location, like yellow on my right wrist, to pinpoint discomfort with a specific restraint, for instance.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens if verbal communication is intentionally restricted? Like with a gag. How do you stay safe then?
That's where pre-agreed nonverbal safety signals become absolutely crucial.
Like hand signals.
Could be. Simple actions like maybe snapping your fingers repeatedly, holding onto an object like a small ball that can be intentionally dropped.
Ah, the dropped object trick.
Yeah, or rapidly opening and closing a fist. These serve as clear, unambiguous indicators that something is wrong and the play needs to pause or stop entirely, even if you can't speak.
And how should a dominant partner react when any safe word or signal is used? Red, yellow, nonverbal.
Immediately. Without question, the book stresses this heavily. Absolutely no blame, no interrogation, no arguing in that moment.
To stop and check in.
Exactly. It's simply a moment to check in, understand what's happening, and learn more about each other's comfort levels and boundaries. The dominant learns about their sub's triggers or limits, and the sub learns they can trust their dominant to prioritize their safety. It builds trust.
The book also mentions using numbers to check in during play. How does that work?
Yes, this is a really useful technique, kind of like a continuous gauge of the submissive's comfort level throughout a scene.
So you ask them for a number.
Yeah, the dominant might periodically ask their submissive to rate their current experience on a scale, often 1 to 10. 1 might be minimal sensation. 10 is usually their established red safe word equivalent, meaning stop.
So it gives the dom instant feedback.
Exactly. A clear, immediate sense of the sub's intensity level. The book shares an interesting perspective from the author, who, as a dominant, might playfully respond to a sub saying 4 with something like, good, you should have no problem reaching a 9 then.
Maintaining the dynamic.
Right. Or if they say 8, the dominant might ask if they think they can reach a 9, maybe even teasingly suggest going to 11, while actually subtly easing off the intensity to stay within the agreed limits.
Clever. It's a way to keep the play going while constantly monitoring safety.
Exactly. It's about communication within the dynamic itself.
Okay. For those exploring kinky interests online, which many people do now, the book wisely includes a section on online safety. So incredibly important. What are some key takeaways there?
Absolutely crucial, yes. The book starts by acknowledging the reality. Anything you put online could potentially be discovered by someone you might not want seeing it. That's just the nature of the internet.
A necessary caution.
But it also balances this by pointing out the sheer vastness of the internet. A chance encounter with someone you know in a specific niche kink space is relatively unlikely, though not impossible.
So be aware, but not paranoid.
Kind of. It's a reminder that while most people in online kink communities are just like you exploring their interests, there are, unfortunately, also individuals who might not have the best intentions. Standard online safety applies, maybe even more so.
So what practical advice does it offer for staying safer online?
Several key things. Create and consistently use an online kink persona separate from your real-world identity. Different name, non-identifiable avatar.
Protect your identity.
Definitely. Always inform a trusted friend or family member about your plans if you're meeting someone in person for the first time. Where you're going, who you're meeting, when you expect to be back.
Have a safety net.
Exactly. Establish a check-in time with that person and maybe have a secret safe word you can use via text or call if you start to feel unsafe or uncomfortable during the meeting.
Smart. What about the meeting itself?
For any initial in-person meetings, always meet in a public place. Be responsible for your own transportation. Get yourself there and back. Don't rely on them.
Maintain independence.
Yes. Limit your alcohol consumption, especially early on. Never leave your food or drinks unattended. And maybe the most important piece of advice, always, always trust your gut instinct. If something feels off, it probably is. Listen to that feeling.
Solid advice for any online dating, really, but especially important here. Okay, physical safety extends beyond just meeting people. It also includes safer sex practices within kink. What does the book cover there?
Right. Once you have a clearer idea of the types of play you're interested in, the book emphasizes it becomes your responsibility to educate yourself on how to keep yourself and any partners physically safe from infection.
Even in monogamous relationships.
Yes, even for couples who are long-term monogamous and consider themselves fluid bonded, there's still a risk of encountering harmful bacteria or viruses through certain types of play. Anytime there's potential for exchanging bodily fluids, shared toys, oral contact, even hands, sometimes there's a possibility of transmitting infections.
So what concrete steps does it advise?
Well, if you're sharing any insertable toys, the consistent and correct use of condoms is strongly recommended. Simple as that.
What if condoms aren't feasible for a toy?
Then you need to know how to properly sterilize the toy between uses. The book mentions things like boiling metal or glass items.
What about porous materials, like leather or wood?
That's trickier. If sterilization isn't practical, especially for porous materials, it might be worth considering just buying those types of toys in bulk for individual use only, or having separate ones for each partner.
Okay. What about play involving potential blood?
If your play involves activities that might draw blood, even accidentally, it's essential to know how to properly clean all the materials involved to prevent transmitting bloodborne pathogens.
So cleaning protocols are vital.
Absolutely. The book gives specific examples. Leather can be cleaned with certain solutions, but it's porous, can't be fully sterilized. Wood depends heavily on its finish. Electrical play, rope play, strap-on play, each needs research on proper cleaning for that specific equipment.
So it's a shared responsibility.
Definitely. The overarching message is that ensuring safer sex practices is a shared responsibility, whether you identify as top or bottom, and that includes knowing how to properly clean the toys you use.
The book also thoughtfully touches on the submissive partner needing to voice physical limitations or injuries.
Yes, absolutely. Even the most attentive top might unintentionally forget or overlook something crucial. If a particular binding position puts pressure on an old shoulder injury, for example.
Speak up.
It's the submissive's responsibility to use their safe word and remind their partner. The book even playfully suggests the sub has permission to prioritize their own safety, and the top might even playfully punish them if they don't speak up and risk injury.
Huh. Interesting framing.
Conversely, tops have a fundamental responsibility to remember their bottom's stated physical limitations and be aware that in the heat of the moment, a submissive who is really eager to please might inadvertently agree to more than their body can comfortably handle. Check in.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Constant vigilance from both sides. Okay, we've talked a lot about physical safety, which is obviously paramount, but the book also emphasizes the equal importance of emotional safety. How do those two connect?
The book draws a very direct line, basically equating emotional safety with physical safety.
Equal important.
Exactly. If a particular type of play, even if you agreed to it beforehand, starts to become emotionally triggering for you, maybe your top unintentionally says a word or does something that touches on a past trauma.
Use a safe word.
Your emotional safety takes absolute precedence. Use your safe word immediately, without hesitation. Don't try to push through it thinking, oh, I can handle it, or I don't want to ruin the scene.
A good partner would want to know.
Absolutely. A good ethical top will not only respect your limits, but will genuinely appreciate the feedback and the chance to better understand your boundaries.
And tops have a role here too.
Yes, tops have a vital role in creating a safe and supportive space for exploration, even when the activities being considered might feel taboo or emotionally charged.
What if the top feels uncomfortable?
If a top finds themselves feeling uncomfortable with something their partner suggests, they need to communicate their own boundaries clearly and respectfully, while also being careful not to make their partner feel ashamed for their desires.
It goes both ways.
Definitely. And one more thing, if a bottom suddenly seems unusually eager to do something they were hesitant about before, the top needs to be aware they might be acting out of a desire to please. Check in again, make sure the consent is truly enthusiastic and freely given, not just people-pleasing.
So much nuance in maintaining that safe space.
Oh.
Okay, let's delve into what is arguably the absolute cornerstone of any healthy, fulfilling, kinky dynamic: open, honest communication and enthusiastic consent.
This is it, the bedrock. The book kicks off this section with what it calls a sexy truth bomb.
Ooh, intriguing. What is it?
It directly challenges that romanticized notion we see in movies and books. Your partner should somehow magically read your mind and know your body and desires better than you do yourself.
Yeah, the mind reader myth.
Pornography can reinforce that too, unfortunately. But the reality, as the book firmly states, is your partner can only know as much about your inner world, your body, your desires, as you actively communicate to them.
So a crucial first step seems to be knowing yourself first before you can communicate it.
Exactly. The book strongly encourages listeners to spend time alone, maybe with kinky porn or erotica, maybe with sex toys. Just really get to know their own bodies. Understand what brings them pleasure, what doesn't.
Self-discovery is step one.
Without that foundational self-awareness, you simply won't be able to effectively communicate your needs and desires to a partner. The book uses a great analogy. Think of your body like a high-performance race car. You can't expect a stranger to just hop in and know exactly how to drive it perfectly.
You need the owner's manual first.
Exactly. You need to provide it.
The book also lays out 4 communication basics for navigating these talks. What are those?
Okay, the 4 are: have patience, be honest, put the work in, and laugh with, not at.
Let's break those down. Patience.
Kinky communication can be challenging, especially at first. Opening up about deep secrets and desires. That takes time and vulnerability. Don't expect perfection right away. Be patient with yourself and your partner.
Honesty seems obvious, but crucial.
Absolutely crucial. Your partner simply won't know about your specific fantasies unless you actually tell them. And similarly, if something they want doesn't resonate with you, you need to be honest about that too. Though maybe stay open to compromise or trying things if you feel safe.
Okay. And put the work in.
That means both partners need to be actively engaged in the self-examination, the open communication, creating that safe, shame-free space. One person can't carry the whole load.
It's a team effort.
Definitely. And laugh with, not at, foster fun and connection through shared laughter, but be absolutely mindful not to say or do anything that violates trust or makes your partner feel ridiculed.
Unless ridicule is part of the negotiated play, I suppose.
Huh. Unless, of course, gentle teasing and laughing at each other has been explicitly negotiated as part of your dynamic.
Good point. Boundaries are obviously huge here. How does the book define different types of boundaries?
Right. The book explains that boundaries in kink, like in life, can be somewhat fluid. They can shift depending on your mood, your relationship, the specific scene.
Not set in stone forever.
Not necessarily, but it highlights 2 main categories: hard limits and soft limits.
Okay, hard limit.
Hard limits are basically your non-negotiables, things that are absolutely off limits for you, things you never want to do, period.
Like what?
Could be physical, like a past injury prevents certain positions. Could be mental or emotional. Maybe a past trauma makes certain types of power play a definite no-go.
Absolutely respected. And soft limits.
Soft limits are different. These are areas you might be curious about, maybe open to exploring, but only with enthusiastic consent and a very clear understanding that you can stop at any time. No pressure.
So more flexible. Maybe. Or let's try carefully, zones.
Exactly. They represent more flexibility. Something that feels like a soft limit one day might become a hard limit the next, depending on how you feel.
You can change your mind mid-scene.
The really important takeaway is you are always absolutely free to adjust or move your boundaries at any point, even right in the middle of play. If something starts feeling wrong, uncomfortable, overwhelming, safe word, back out, net guilt.
That's empowering. The book also notes that communication can be tricky because kinky terms can mean different things to different people.
Yes, this is so important. The same word, like spanking or bondage, can mean vastly different things to different people within the kink world.
So you need specifics.
Absolutely. Clear, direct clarification is essential. You can't just vaguely say, I'm interested in being tied up. You need a deeper conversation. What kind of restraints? What positions? How much restriction? What's the intended feeling?
Ask, what does that mean to you?
Perfect question. Whenever your partner uses a kinky term, ask them what it specifically means to them. Make sure you're both on the same page. Avoid assumptions.
And how does all this focus on clear communication build trust?
Well, when consent is actively sought and consistently respected, when hard limits are never pushed or tested, when proper aftercare is consistently provided, trust just naturally builds and deepens over time.
It's earned through actions.
Exactly. It takes time, ongoing effort, but with consistent respect and communication, those boundaries might even gently shift as comfort increases, allowing for deeper exploration.
And breaking that trust.
Conversely, violating trust in this really intimate, vulnerable space, that can be profoundly damaging. It can set back progress indefinitely. Trust is paramount.
The book also talks about different types of consent, which I found really insightful. It's not just a simple yes-no, is it?
No, definitely not. It's much more nuanced, more layered. The book uses relatable examples, like maybe you're reluctantly agreeing to go to a family dinner out of obligation,
Okay.
or feeling pressured into a sexual act you didn't truly desire. These illustrate that consent can be complicated. It exists on a spectrum.
So what's the standard for kink?
The book strongly emphasizes, as a bottom, you should only ever give consent because you genuinely, enthusiastically want to do the activity.
Not out of obligation.
Never. And equally importantly, as a top, it's your ethical responsibility to pay close attention to why your bottom is consenting. Are they truly excited, or are they maybe just trying to please you? Or maybe even afraid to say no?
Looking for genuine desire.
True. Ethical consent comes from a place of genuine desire and free will, not obligation, fear, or coercion, ever.
This is also foundational. Now, let's touch on something that might seem obvious but is vital.
Yeah.
Openly owning and communicating your pleasure.
Yes. The book stresses that kinky communication can only really work effectively if everyone involved is comfortable openly acknowledging and talking about what brings them pleasure.
Had to talk about the good stuff, too.
Exactly. Everyone in the dynamic needs to feel empowered to discuss what they genuinely enjoy. It's okay to hold back until you feel safe, of course, but ultimately, being honest about your interests and your enjoyment is essential for a mutually satisfying experience.
Okay. For listeners feeling nervous about how to even start this conversation with a partner, the book offers some helpful suggestions on how to introduce your partner to your kink. What are some ideas?
Yeah, it suggests a few different, maybe less intimidating approaches. One idea is to bring it up in a relaxed setting, maybe over dinner, maybe with a glass of wine. A little alcohol can sometimes lower inhibitions for an open chat.
Relaxed atmosphere helps.
Another suggestion is to try introducing elements during sex through suggestive dirty talk. The heat of the moment, heightened arousal, can sometimes make it easier to express desires.
Testing the waters gently.
Kind of. You can also use external sources, like porn, erotica, maybe even references in pop culture.
Like, hey, I saw this thing in a movie.
Exactly. Casually mention something you saw or read, express general curiosity about it. That can feel less vulnerable than blurring out a deeply personal kinky fantasy right away.
Good strategies. Active listening is another skill the book highlights. What does that mean here?
It's more than just hearing words. Active listening here means consciously trying to truly understand your partner's perspective.
How do you do that effectively?
The book suggests a really interesting technique. After asking a question, especially about a sensitive topic like desires or boundaries, try taking a slightly uncomfortable pause, like a deliberate 20-second.
20 seconds of silence. It feels long.
It can, but that silence gives your partner the mental space they might need to fully form their thoughts, especially on subjects where they might usually censor themselves.
Give them time to think and feel safe.
Exactly. Then, when they respond, engage deeply. Ask thoughtful, open-ended follow-up questions. How does that make you feel? What does that mean to you specifically? This kind of deep listening builds trust and encourages more honesty.
What if? What if your partner seems resistant, or doesn't understand, or even seems dismissive of your interests? That must be tough.
Very tough. The book offers guidance here, too. If a partner is just hesitant to open up, it suggests patience, continued openness, honesty about your own curiosities, maybe explore erotica together, or take a workshop on intimacy. Provide a safe, non-judgmental space for when they're ready.
And if they're dismissive or don't get it?
This is key. The book stresses that while it's perfectly okay for someone to say, "That's not for me," it is absolutely not okay for them to shame or belittle you for your interests.
Your desires aren't wrong just because they don't share them.
Exactly. Your desires aren't gross or weird. Having sexual curiosities, even specific fetishes, is a very common human experience. Shaming is unacceptable.
Okay, this next section really stood out to me. Physical vs. emotional feelings. The book argues that emotional feelings are actually paramount in BDSM, even though it often looks very physical. Can you elaborate?
Absolutely. This is a crucial distinction. The book uses really clear examples like spanking and bondage.
Okay, take spanking.
It's not just about the physical smack. To really engage with it kinkily, you need to consider the emotions the spanking is meant to evoke. Are you playing a naughty student being punished? A slave being disciplined?
Yeah.
A lover engaging in intense play? The desired emotional feeling fundamentally shapes the type of spanking, the intensity, the intent behind it.
Ah, the why behind the what's.
Precisely. Same with bondage. Is a goal for the person being bound to feel helpless and vulnerable, terrified, excited and anticipatory, even silly and playfully restricted?
So you negotiate the feeling first.
Understanding the desired emotional experience should always come before just focusing on the physical sensations and techniques.
That's a really profound point. And it leads nicely into navigating fantasy versus reality in kink.
Exactly. While losing yourself in a shared fantasy is often the goal of play, all the negotiation and planning has to be firmly grounded in reality.
You can't just live purely in the fantasy.
Right. The book gives examples of fantasies that sound exciting but might not translate safely or practically into real life. Maybe extreme, prolonged scenarios, or things with serious real-world consequences if not handled responsibly.
So you plan in reality to play in fantasy.
Perfect summary. You absolutely must discuss the less glamorous but necessary details, health conditions, emergency plans, clear limits to ensure the play stays within safe, sane, agreed-upon boundaries and doesn't accidentally become harmful.
Okay. As someone explores, they might start developing a kinky persona. What does the book say about this?
It explains that kink is a spectrum, right? Most people are somewhere between fully dom and fully sub, often shifting between roles depending on partner, situation, activity.
Fluidity again.
Yes, and it's totally normal for your kinky persona to evolve over time as you gain experience and understand yourself better.
Do past experiences influence it?
Interestingly, yes. Past life experiences can significantly shape your kinky persona. Being open about those with a partner can help them understand your reactions and triggers during play.
So there's no one correct persona.
Not at all. It's all about the ongoing process of exploring what feels authentic and exciting for you at any given time.
What about the external stuff, like what to wear? Do you need expensive fetish gear?
While beautiful, elaborate fetish wear can be appealing, the book wisely suggests starting small. Maybe one key piece you love, then supplement with affordable, finds lingerie sections, thrift stores, costume shops.
So it's not about the price tag.
Definitely not. It emphasizes strongly, it's not the clothes that create your sexy or powerful persona, it's you bringing that energy.
Confidence is key.
Clothing and accessories can help with the ritual, getting into the headspace, enhancing the atmosphere, but genuine self-confidence is what truly makes you feel and appear sexy, whatever you're wearing. Jeans and a t-shirt can feel incredibly powerful if you own it.
The book also touches briefly on women's sexuality and feminism here.
Yeah, just briefly. It notes the societal pressures on women's sexuality and suggests that openly embracing and exploring your own desires, including kinky ones, building a life and sex life that suits you, that can actually be a deeply feminist act of self-ownership.
Owning your desires is feminist. I like that. Okay, the book lists common types of kinksters, dom and subtypes. Is this about labels?
No, the intention isn't rigid labeling at all. The lists masochist, emotional masochist, thrill seeker, maternal dominant, playful escapist, fetishist, etc. They're not meant to put people in boxes.
What's the point?
They serve to illustrate the incredible diversity of interests, motivations, and desires within the kink community, to encourage curiosity and respect for others' preferences, even if you don't share them.
So you see the range of possibilities.
Exactly. And the book even suggests many people find they blend elements from several types to create their own unique kinky persona.
Okay, let's talk framework. The cycle of play. What are the key stages?
Right, the kink cycle of play. In its essential form, it's 3 key interconnected stages: negotiation, the play itself, the scene, and aftercare.
Negotiation, play, aftercare.
Negotiation, where you discuss interests, boundaries, limits, health concerns, anxieties. Play, the enactment of the agreed-upon scene, intense, silly, sexual, non-sexual, whatever was planned. Aftercare, The ritualized process of self-soothing and mutual support to return to emotional equilibrium.
And following the cycle builds trust.
Consistently following this cycle helps build trust and allows for deeper, more fulfilling exploration over time. Each stage is vital.
Negotiation can feel awkward, especially at first. How does the book suggest making it more comfortable?
It acknowledges that initial awkwardness is common, definitely, but reassures it gets easier with practice. Using tools like questionnaires can really help when you're still figuring things out.
Questionnaires as a starting point.
Yeah. The main goal isn't to write a rigid script for the scene, but to establish a safe, agreed-upon arena for play.
Defining the playground.
Exactly. You discuss roles, the overall feel or mood, specific activities, maybe toys. The top then uses that info to structure the scene, always respecting the bottom's needs and limits. By the time play starts, everyone should feel informed, safe, and enthusiastically consenting.
What else should negotiation cover?
Should also cover emotional and physical desires, relevant past experiences, specific aftercare needs for each person, maybe even the expected duration of the scene.
Comprehensive.
Yeah.
And then, after the intensity of play, comes aftercare. Absolutely crucial, right?
Absolutely crucial. Aftercare is specifically designed to help both partners gently transition back to their normal emotional and mental state after the intensity.
Why is that transition needed?
Kinky play can be intense, physically, emotionally. Aftercare serves as a vital reminder that the rules played, any objectification within the scene, that's not how you view each other in real life. It reinforces the underlying care and respect.
What does aftercare actually look like?
It can take loads of forms. Varies hugely. Common examples: cuddling, gentle vanilla sex, a warm bath together, talk about mundane, everyday stuff, sharing comforting food and drink.
Finding what works for you.
Exactly. Finding what helps both you and your partner feel grounded, safe, and emotionally reconnected. And remember, both tops and bottoms often need and benefit from aftercare. It's not just for the sub.
Good point. The book also mentions top drop and sub drop. What are those?
Ah, yes. These terms refer to emotional lows that can sometimes happen after the intense high of a play session. Kind of like an emotional or even hormonal crash.
Like a post-adrenaline dip.
Somewhat akin to that, yeah. You might feel elated right after the scene, but then later experience a sudden dip into sadness, anxiety, maybe mild depression. You might question how the other person sees you, feel extra vulnerable.
So it can happen later, not immediately?
It can happen immediately, or hours, even a day or two later sometimes.
What do you do if it happens?
Key things: acknowledge the feelings if they arise. Communicate openly with your partner about them, and engage in self-care, whatever helps you feel grounded and safe. Warm bath, comfort food, quiet time, seeking reassurance.
Communication again. Okay, feedback is also essential for growth. How does the book suggest handling feedback after play, which could feel sensitive?
Vital, yes. Feedback is part of negotiation and aftercare. Some people like to discuss what worked and didn't right after a scene. Others need time to process first. Both are valid.
It must be hard not to take it personally.
It can be easy to, definitely, especially when it's about something so intimate. But try to remember your partner is just sharing their subjective experience, how they perceive things. It's data for improvement.
Any tips for making feedback easier?
The book offers a good structure. Maybe start with what you genuinely liked and ask for more of that next time. Then gently address what didn't work so well, perhaps suggesting alternatives. Openness, honesty, respect, crucial for building trust and making future play better for everyone.
Makes sense. Now, the book has a fascinating section, Games People Play, giving examples of different kinky activities. Can you give us a few diverse examples?
Absolutely. It covers a huge range. Bondage, we mentioned physical restraint, evoking feelings from vulnerability to security. Spanking using hands or implements for impact can be punishment, tension building, or just pleasurable sensation.
What else?
Role play, exploring different characters, fantasies. Sensation play, using tools and techniques for varied physical feelings beyond typical touch. Cross-dressing and gender play, exploring different expressions of gender.
More unusual ones.
Servitude, one partner willingly serving the other. Using gags restricting speech, creating power imbalance or sensory effects. It even touches on more niche interests like golden showers or orgasm control as forms of consensual play. For each, it often mentions the what, potential emotional feelings and physical feelings.
Wow, quite the spectrum. And it emphasizes you don't need expensive toys to start exploring these.
That's a great point it makes. The book enthusiastically uses the term pervertibles, things you can find in everyday places.
Pervertibles. Love it. Like what?
Hardware stores, office supply stores, your kitchen. Simple bag clips, clothespins, soft sheets, bungee cords, rulers, wooden spoons. All can be used creatively and safely with consent to explore different sensations and dynamics. You don't need to break the bank.
Resourceful. The book also briefly covers the anatomy of a scene, beginnings and endings. What's key there?
For the beginning, it's often about intentionally setting the tone. Maybe the sub presents themselves to the dom in a specific ritualistic way, or the dom establishes authority and rules right at the start. It's about getting into the right headspace.
And the ending.
As we discussed, aftercare is the crucial concluding part of every scene, no matter how brief or intense. Transitioning back, reinforcing trust and connection.
And things don't always go to plan, right?
Yeah.
The book mentions flexibility.
Absolutely. Real life happens. Be prepared to adapt. Maybe a toy isn't working right, or an idea feels too intense in the moment. The top especially needs to remember they have the prerogative to adjust or change plans within the negotiated limits. Flexibility is key.
I found the bit on BDSM and ritual intriguing. How can rituals enhance things?
The book suggests looking to establish traditions, religious ceremonies, royal courts for inspiration. It's about deliberately creating a sense of the sacred, the powerful, the formal within the dynamic.
Like specific ways of speaking or acting.
Exactly. Specific rules of address, ways of presenting oneself, creating a distinct atmosphere through consistent actions. These rituals help shift mindset, create a clearer boundary between the scene's intensity and everyday life.
And you don't need a dedicated dungeon for this.
Absolutely not. A dedicated space is nice if you can, but far from essential. You can transform any room temporarily by focusing on the five senses.
Sight, sound.
Sight, soft lighting, candles, sound, mood music, taste, water, specific treat. Touch, luxurious blanket, different floor texture. Smell, scented candles, oils. Simple sensory shifts make a big difference in ambiance.
Okay. The concept of a formal dominant-submissive contract is also introduced. What's the purpose?
The book presents it mainly as a communication tool, not just for hardcore players. It helps formally articulate aspects of the relationship, spell out obligations, clarify expectations.
What kind of things go in it?
The example covers a lot. Duration, purpose of the agreement, rules around collars or symbols, responsibilities of dom and sub, specific duties, rules of conduct, financial aspects, though cautioned against, protocols for offenses punishments, training goals, rules on alcohol drugs, social sexual contact outside scenes, safe words, aftercare practices.
Wow, very detailed. Is it legally binding?
Not at all. It stresses it should be collaborative, everyone has input, rooted in realistic expectations, not pure fantasy. It's a living document, meant to be revisited and reevaluated as things change.
So a communication aid, not a legal trap.
Exactly. A valuable tool to enhance communication, build understanding, ensure everyone feels secure and respected. The book even gives examples for couples living together adapting principles with clothing signals or random playful rules.
Finally, the book includes a sexual adventure questionnaire and a negotiation worksheet. What's the value there?
These are practical tools, starting points for self-discovery and partner negotiation. The questionnaire helps you privately explore your interests, fantasies, limits, goals, great if you're shy or unsure where to start.
And the worksheet.
The negotiation worksheet gives a practical framework for discussions before a scene. Key questions on titles, experience, safe words, limits, health concerns, expectations, desired feelings. Both are designed to facilitate clearer communication and ensure everyone is informed, comfortable, and enthusiastically consenting.
Wow, we have covered such an incredible amount of ground in this deep dive into kinky sex tips for curious girls. To really bring it all together for our listener, what would you say are the absolute key takeaways?
The core message, I think, is that BDSM and kink, they're really about self-discovery, about open, honest communication with partners, about the absolute necessity of enthusiastic consent, and exploring your desires in a way that always prioritizes safety, physical and emotional, and sanity.
And that key phrase.
And remembering, there is no right, only what's right for you. No single correct way to be kinky, only what feels right, authentic, and fulfilling for you.
And this deep dive, drawing from the activity book, is really meant as an encouraging first step for anyone feeling curious, right? Less intimidating.
Exactly. Our goal was to make this world feel less overwhelming, much more accessible. To empower you, our listener, to continue your own exploration at your own pace in a way that feels genuinely comfortable and exciting for you.
So as you continue pondering your own curiosities, here's a final thought to mull over. What unexplored aspect of your own desires might actually hold some surprising and valuable insights about yourself?
Or perhaps consider this. In what ways might more open and honest communication with your current partner or potential future ones unlock a completely new dimension of connection and pleasure in your relationships?
We definitely encourage you to continue exploring. Seek out kink-affirming resources, engage in thoughtful self-reflection.
And always, always prioritize your own comfort, your safety, and your overall well-being.
And please remember, there's absolutely no shame in curiosity and certainly no judgment here. We truly hope this deep dive has been illuminating and maybe sparked some new avenues of self-discovery for you. Until our next exploration together.